The KRGS Doors Show, proudly brought to you by KRGS Doors. For all your shopfront roller shutters, roller grills, folding closures and bifold doors, visit www.krgsdoors.com.au. Welcome to the KRGS Doors Podcast. I'm your host, Drew Blackman. The aim of our podcast is to talk to cool people with cool stories, whether it be our suppliers, customers, staff, other business owners, or people from different walks of life, and get to know them a bit better. If you're interested in coming on, drop us a line or email, or connect with us via Facebook, and we can have a chat to see what we can do. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by KRGS Doors Managing Director Clayton Blackman and the voice of Speedway, Wade Aunger. Wade has that much dirt and methanol up his nose, he can hardly breathe. If you've watched any motorsport racing, you would have heard Wade's dulcet tones, or you may have heard him on Adam Brand's Dirt Track Cowboy. Please welcome to the podcast, Mr. Wade Aunger. Wade, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast. What is the Wade Aunger story?
Wow. It's really interesting that we're talking at the moment because last Friday was the service for my Auntie Jan, who passed away. She would have been 80 this coming Christmas. And my Auntie Jan and my dad are intrinsic to my Wade Aunger Speedway story because my papa, Auntie Jan and Dad's dad, and Mum took them to Claremont Speedway back when I was only even before I was thought of. So my papa lived on a wheat farm in Carnamah in Western Australia, and he would drive 191 mile to the Speedway on the Friday afternoon.
That's dedication, isn't it?
Jump in the car, head back, jump on the tractor when they got home at 2 or 3 in the morning and get back into the work on the field. So he took my dad, and my dad in turn took me. So my dad joined the Air Force.
To Claremont.
Yeah, to Claremont was our thing. And my earliest memory is around 3 or 4. And my Nana said that I would say, there's going to be a crash in this race, Nana, or, Mick McKeon's going to win this race, Nana. And she said most of the time I was right. I think I was just guessing. But my dad was in the Air Force, so we got posted around a lot. And so when I was 6, we got posted to Point Cook in Victoria. And my Nana would keep sending all the Claremont Speedway programs to me all filled out. So I had all the results. So we lived for 2 years in Victoria, and then Dad got posted to Malaysia for 2 years, so we went over there.
And you kept all the programs?
And Nana would keep sending me the programs.
Oh, how's that?
So we got posted back to South Australia in 81. So I was 10 then. And Nana would keep sending me these programs. And I took a friend of mine to what was then called Speedway Park, now called Speedway City, which is now actually just pretty well in ruins. And anyway, became a great...
That's in Perth, mate, WA?
No, that was Adelaide, the Barossa Valley. So, basically Speedway City's in Virginia, out in the market growers area.
Yeah.
So I started taking my mate with me there and sort of got him into it and the passion for it. And I got to 15 and my dad got posted back to Western Australia. And I thought, wow, I can finally go to the Speedway with Papa again after all those years,
Yeah.
So we got back to within 2 weeks of the Claremont Speedway season starting. We were living at Bullsbrook on the RAF base. And the phone rang about 11 o'clock that night. And I sat straight up and said to my little sister, Papa's dead. And the phone was my Nana telling my dad, hurry, Pop, your dad's had a heart attack. So Dad raced off to Karen up to their home and never got there in time.
Wow.
So I wrote a letter to the Claremont Speedway office and said, hey, I'm sort of 15 years of age and I'm a resident of Bullsbrook, and my papa went to the Speedway for 35 years. He used to drive 191 mile, told that story. I said, could you just put a line in the program that just tributes his commitment? I think people need more, Speedway needs more fans like him. So anyway, we drove in the front gates on opening night, Dad and I, and they printed the whole letter.
Oh, wow.
So you can imagine my dad's response.
He was in tears?
So he didn't know that you'd sent the letter?
He didn't know you'd sent. Oh, wow.
No,
even better.
I just thought it'd just be like a Vale George Aunger or something like that. So I said, Dad, it's in. And he goes, what? And I said, oh, here. And I showed him the program. And I went to the office, the Claremont Speedway office, to find the editor to say thank you. And there was this nice lady there. And she said, oh, can I help you? And I said, oh, can I see Brad Thompson, the editor? She said, he's not here right now. Why is that? And I said, oh, I wrote a letter to him about my papa, and I just wanted to say thank you. She goes, oh no, that was Con Migro. He put that letter in, and Con is Mr. Speedway. He's the boss. And I was like, wow. So I was only 15. I thought, gee, that's really cool. So I got to meet Con. Anyway, that letter, Nana took the letter out of the program and put it in a frame of Papa on her TV. She kept it there till the day she died in the late 90s.
Right.
So that became a really important introduction even all those years later after Popper was gone, to that way of life. And so I was in year 10 in WA, and I started writing letters back to my friend in South Australia. And they all became Heat 4 was a win from Bert Vosbergen. And he's like, mate, what are you sending me these for? You should be sending them to a magazine. I said, mate, I'm 15 years old. Who's going to
give me a start?
Who's going to want a kid writing this stuff? And he said, oh, you should try. So I started sending some stuff to people. Anyway, a guy called Bill Meyer, who's Wayne Meyer's dad from Speedway Star magazine, said, we'll run your stuff. So I would handwrite my letters and post them over, and they would use the photographer's stuff. It was called Western Ways.
So where was that magazine out of?
That's Sydney, but it was Australia-wide.
Okay.
So I'm in year 10 thinking I'm pretty cool.
I'm a journo.
I've got my own,
column.
Big column, yeah. And then the speed cars over in WA said, can you write our column called Wild and Wingless? So I said, yeah, I'll do that. And then the Super Sedan said, can you write a 2-page thing for us called Sedan Scene?
And you're 16.
Yeah. And so my papa, and then Con said to me, the editor of the program is going to leave next season. Would you like to be the editor? And I said, yeah. And he said, do you want to commentate? And I said, yeah. I never had any dreams of doing that. My mum said that my voice hasn't changed since I was commentating her Matchbox cars around her bed. She said just the stories are a little bit different. So I said, well, I definitely do want to do that. And Con said, well, you need to go to a winter track and learn. So I just went to the local track called Ellenbrook Speedway, which is every second Sunday in the winter. And I learnt from an old man named Eric Dyson, who used to race sidecars. Yeah. And he smoked so heavily. It was like a Rastafarian Christmas party in the commentary box. You could barely see through the smoke. And he was always really inappropriate, Eric. He always said the most inappropriate things. But I kind of learnt the basics of it. And then Con said to me, would you like to work full-time at the office? And at the time, that seemed like the most incredible idea in my life that I could do that. But I was worried that if Con and I had a fallout or something, that I wouldn't be able to commentate, or just a bit concerned about it. And I just qualified for my Bachelor of Arts and Social Sciences in journalism. So I was going to go to Curtin University, and the Daily News was one of 3 newspapers in Perth, and that went bust. And I thought, there's a lot of cadetships that suddenly aren't going to be available.
Yeah. So
I thought I'll just take a year off, and I come over. My dad was posted to Canberra. I come over for a little while and saw Dad, and then I went back and sold cars for a little bit for a Hyundai dealership as a junior salesman. And Con said to me, you sure you don't want this job? And I said, I kind of think I do. So that it just seemed to be the right time. So I went and worked for Con as I was really just his receptionist, his secretary. But we come up with this term, sales and marketing.
But you learned
look better on my card.
But you learnt the ropes.
Yeah, and Con, as still is, he's Mr. Speedway. He's been in the game over 50 years, announcing and promoting and stuff. And we would wear a tie and a blazer announcing. He came from that old school era where you were like the Raymond brothers, very much about the show. And the thing I recall most from Con is he always told me to ring 5 minutes ahead if you were late. That was his thing. Always let someone know if you're going to be late. He came from that old school of door-to-door sales, and he got his first look at Speedway through a free ticket at a school visit one day, and that's what changed his life. So I learned a lot of really amazing things from Con, and I spent 4 or 5 years sort of working in that infrastructure. I thought it couldn't get any better than that.
At some stage you were on TV over there in Western Australia?
Yeah, so I worked for Channel 7 News. Just amazing things happen. The director of news, like the main man that calls what's going to be on the news that night, was a Speedway fan.
Right.
And he used to be in the grandstand on Friday nights. His name is John Rudd.
Listening to your commentary.
Yeah, and he said to Con, that young man that you've got announcing there, maybe we can do a Speedway report every Thursday, and he can do one every Saturday as well if he wants. And, you can come down and he can learn. And I was like, wow, I didn't see that coming.
And how old were you at this stage, Wade?
I reckon I would have been 20.
Wow.
Something like that. And my mentor, the guy that would look over my shoulder and cross out all the extra words that I wrote, was Neil Brooks.
Oh, yeah, Brooksy, the swimmer.
Yeah, the Olympic, the mean machine. So Brooksy would go, no, too many words, cross. And Ruddy would always tell me, and it stuck with me to this day, don't tell me about an engine in your story. Tell me about the story behind the engine. I don't want, my audience are not Speedway fans. They're football fans, cricket fans, basketball. So it needs to be a human element. If the engine came from a man who spent 2 years in Vietnam and came back with one arm and built it, then tell me about your engine. But he wanted it to always be broadly interesting. So he taught me about making stories that people related to regardless of what the topic was. So I worked there, and Dennis Cometti would come in, and I was in awe of Dennis because he's
still a great voice.
Oh, what an icon. He taught me to say, as much as I could in as few words as I could. That's where I learned to slow down with things. So some really amazing experiences working for Channel 7, just part-time. Thursday, the cameraman would come down and meet me at the track. I'd have my story worked out. Brooke Tatnall would come over with a Winfield series, and I would stand in the middle of the track in the back straight with the cameraman, and Brooke and George would go either side of me.
Wow.
You couldn't do that anymore.
No.
I had my back to them, and they'd be wide open, and the cameraman would be looking at me going...
He'd be shitting himself.
Like, what are we doing here? And that's how I got to know Brooke. So we've been mates for, every bit of 30 years through just meeting the Tatnalls when they come over to WA. So had that experience with TV, and then I thought, what am I going to do? Where do I want to go? And a friend of mine told me there was a track in America that had just been repurchased, and I thought I really want to work in America. I'd been there in 92 and just fallen in love with the place. And then I took a tour of Aussies in 94 and 95. So I thought, I have an affinity with America and I can't explain it. So I want to go back there. And rang up the answering machine and said, congratulations, you've just hired Australia's best announcer. I'll call you back and let you know when I'm going to start. This little track in Ohio, I was just BSing. I didn't think I was that. I just thought I'd just be... Americans love a bit of bravado.
Yes.
So I waited 2 weeks and I called them back and the lady answered the phone. I said, hi, my name's Wade from Australia. And she goes, Billy, that guy from Australia's on the phone. So I had a bit of mystery and intrigue before we got started. That was 96. So I ended up going over there in early 96 and I stayed there for 6 months working on watering the track, announcing, marketing. I had my own little TV show.
You would have loved it.
It was incredible. Unbelievably
for
great
any
experience.
Any Speedway enthusiast, that's just living the life, isn't it?
Yeah. I had 2 Aussie mates that come over and race late models for me a couple of times from WA, and I brought the guy that graded the track from WA over with me as well. He did the track for 3 months, and phenomenal experience. Like, very challenging and heartbreaking at times, but phenomenal experience to see every aspect. And on Friday night, I'd drive to the nearest track because in Ohio, there's probably 15 tracks within 2 hours. So you had to actually canvass your drivers for the next night. So I would have these little pieces of paper written up, 2,000 to win, 200 to start. And you have to walk into every truck at the pits and go, hey, guys, really love to see you race at our place tomorrow night, Clayton. Drew, if you're not busy tomorrow night, we'd love you to come. You couldn't rely on them just to come because they had so many options. So it taught me that humility and that, that you had to offer something to teams. Whereas in Sydney, we're very lucky. There's nowhere else to race.
Correct.
So that was a really amazing experience. And I came back in 97 with no real full-time job. I was expecting to go back to America. It didn't happen. But I went down to Bunbury and worked down there.
Yep.
And then I got a call from David Lander out of the blue. Would I be interested in doing Mike Raymond's job in Sydney? And that's how my Sydney connection started.
So did you get to work with Mike Raymond at all?
No. No, and he was a god. Like Mike, as a little kid growing up watching Bathurst and, and Oran Park and Amaroo. And
well, he was the voice of it, mate, wasn't he? Whether it was V8s or whether it was sprint cars or whatever, he was the voice of...
Yeah. The hanky-panky Valvoline Yankee.
That's right.
All that stuff. He was such a great wordsmith.
Yeah.
That's and alliteration. I still love alliteration. Madsen monsters them at Parramatta. Davison destroys them at. I love that the way Mike.
Well, he had them for all. Like he had them for Dick Johnson, Peter Brock, King of the Mountain,
Peter Perfect.
Peter. That's right. He had them for all. It didn't matter. Didn't matter what driver it was. He had them for all.
And it put Steve, his brother, in a really awkward position because I got brought over to Parramatta just to have a look. Dave flew me in.
Yeah.
So just walk around the pits. We're not going to tell anyone that you're here. Just go and have a look around. And Gary Rush had sort of said to David, this guy in Perth might be all right for, working in the future. So I got there and had a look around. And that night, Skip was there and Gary Brazier and Max and Kerry and Brooke, and they were all there, all the superstars. And we only saw them once or twice a year in Perth. So all of a sudden, here's all the superstars running weekly shows.
That's right. I was going to say you were going to see them on a weekly basis.
Yeah. And so I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. And so David and I sat down. We had a talk later that night, and he said, I want you to do the PR. I want you to make the ads. I want you to look at the TV that we're doing and stuff like that. And he basically doubled my money.
Wow.
And I went... So that's about what I was thinking. Where
do I sign?
I didn't want to seem too keen. And he said to me, as he dropped me off, he said to me, I said, I want to do the launch at the Sydney Opera House.
Yeah.
And he said to me, why would you do that? I said, well, the Opera House is uniquely Sydney. Yep. And Parramatta is uniquely Sydney. So I want to take the sport out of where you expect it. And he said, oh, okay, if you want. David always had this really... oh, okay. And he pulled his glasses down, all right. So I got Neil Brooks, who was living in Sydney at the time, and I asked Brooksy to come and host it for us. And a very young Adam Brand came and played. And anyway, he dropped me off, he said, I'd really love to buy Newcastle. And he never said any more about it. And when he picked me up 3 months later, he goes, there's good news and bad news, son. I said, what's that? He goes, the good news is I just bought Newcastle. The bad news is you're going to be very busy.
So you had to go between Parramatta and Newcastle?
Friday and Saturday. He shifted Parramatta to Friday so he could run, be at both places. And it put Steve Raymond in a really awkward position because Steve loved his Speedway, loved Parramatta. Suddenly, I've been brought in to replace his brother. I think Mike clearly was upset about that, as he would be.
Yeah.
His position's been changed to this upstart kid from Perth, and Mike is the doyen of the game. So Steve had to, and I vividly remember Steve saying to me my first night, just sit there and just chill.
Yeah.
Because I was pretty up and about and very energetic, and Steve and Mike had that beautiful delivery. So I was this raw kid that over from Perth, and took Steve a little bit of a time to realise that I was the real deal, that I wasn't
to warm to you.
Yeah, that I wasn't just an idiot that was excitable, that I had something to contribute. And to his great credit, Steve and I had a really wonderful kind of like a straight man and the little young upstart thing that worked really well. And in later years, I got to work with Mike a couple of times at a Supercross in Melbourne for Phil Christensen, which was a huge honour. And I was very nervous about it because I was thinking he's going to think I'm the guy. And to his great credit,
I'm going to take over.
Yeah, and Mike was tremendous. So it was a great honour to work with both the Raymond brothers. As a little kid to say I could do that, I'm pretty fortunate.
How much research do you put into your commentary side of things? Because you are known as the voice of Speedway and that type of thing. But is there research that goes in hours and hours, or is it just all off the cuff that you know everything?
Drew, I'm very lazy. I'm very spontaneous. I have no mechanical knowledge at all. Can't tell you about engines. I can tell you the basics about bleeders and something to do with shocks, but not a lot. I'm really not good with torsion bars and all the things about our sport.
Geez, you sell it well.
Well,
because you sound like you know everything about it,
and
mate.
I don't. I know that Mick Salla has two great parents and a big sister who's very proud of him, that Mick used to play water polo, that he looks like, a Russian boxer.
Ivan Drago?
Yes.
Ivan Drago,
yeah. Well, I always think he looks like the guy from Rocky. I'm trying to think of the actual actor. I always tell people that he looks exactly like him, but it'll come to me. But I love human stories, and that comes back to what John Rudd taught me all those years before. No one's going to relate to driving a sprint car in the crowd, but they relate to the fact that there's this great family from Windsor Downs whose truck is immaculate and whose mum can't watch.
Yeah.
So my greatest story, and I'm sure it wears Monica out, God love her, I'll tell everyone who listen that Mick's mum can't watch him race.
Yeah.
Because I think more people relate to that as a mum than they would about what it's like to drive one.
It's got that human element about it, mate. Like you say, his mum's here, but she can't watch him.
The only thing that I usually study for was the Speedway Grand Prix, the motorcycles, when I did that down at Etihad, because that is very specific. That is a lot of European riders, a lot of history, and you really have to get your teeth around it. Whereas me, I'd rather know the human side of people that I have in a conversation like this than I would about trying to understand their race car.
Yeah, and obviously the Mick Salla that Wade's talking about is he drives the number 56 car, sprint car, which our company KRGS Doors is a proud sponsor of Mick. We've been with Mick for 6 years.
Yep.
And they were on our podcast, two episodes ago, I think. Yeah, Mark and Mick were both sat here, and it was really good to have a chat to those guys because they're both small business owners as well.
Yeah.
So it was good to see their work away from sprint cars. So it was good to have a chat to those guys.
Now, just on that, getting those stories, is that from you just kicking around the pits?
Yeah.
Seeing people, asking questions, that type of thing?
And just listening. A lot of times you just hear the most incredible things, and I always ask as a parent, what's it like, or a wife, what's it like? How do you cope with the danger, or how do you cope with that, and so it just becomes, oh, is that your little sister? Is it? Oh, is that your little brother? Does he race? Oh, what does he do? And so it's more just general conversation like we're having now.
Yeah,
that's what I love about our sport.
You spoke before about George Tatnell, and I know George is George used to have a workshop at St. Peter's there at Princess Highway. Our factory was only just down the road from there. So we used to, we were at St. Peter's for 8.5 years before we moved to these premises. So we used to pass George's old factory.
The big blue shed.
Yeah, but our father Phil, so he was a big George Tatnall fan, and obviously then it goes on, and you keep an eye out for Brooke and so forth. And Sans Souci was where our father grew up, and also obviously that's where they were from. The Tatnalls were from Sans Souci, and so there was a little bit of close association there. I think Brooks, I think he's 12 months younger than me, so he's my age and so forth. So he started at a young age when he was only 16, driving sprint cars and that sort of stuff. So you go like, here's a kid that's not even able to drive on the road, and he's driving something that's got 800 horsepower.
Yeah.
So it's an eye opener.
Just on that, have you ever felt the need that you wanted to drive?
No, because I don't have the money. I often get a chance to drive. That happens quite regularly at practice nights and things like that. And
sponsors nights.
I'll never knock it back for two reasons. The first thing is the obvious: why wouldn't you want to do it if you could? And when you don't have to pay for it. The second bit is it gives you a tremendous reminder of how there's so many elements to that sport as a driver you can't understand as a fan.
Yeah.
The claustrophobia.
Yeah.
The fact that you're strapped in so tight you can't look to your left or right.
Yeah.
You can't hear anything but the engine noise. You don't have any understanding of what it's like as a spectator and the challenges. So it's a great reminder for me to know that a legend car is horrendously hard to drive compared to a speed car, which reacts so beautifully and is so plant, squat, and go. How a wing works on a sprint car, you just never think it's going to turn. You just got to trust the process. So I've driven dozens of cars over the years. And just recently in February, I went on a sidecar with my sidecar hero, Dennis Nash, which was tremendous honour and such a terrifying experience. So the result is, yes, as much as I can, I'll do it. My son, two of my four boys race Speedway karts, but I won't race. I don't have the money and I prefer to do what I do.
We've been lucky enough to be in the two-seater at Parramatta. And you see YouTube video and it just doesn't do it justice until you're actually strapped in. I think I was in with Brett Loadsman.
Oh, yeah, cool.
And behind him, mate, and just the noise. Like, you're only out there for 5 laps, but do yourself a favour. If you get an opportunity to go and do that, whether it's at Valvoline or wherever, just go and experience it, because that is just...
Well, you just don't believe something could go that fast and turn.
No.
You know, when you get to the end of that corner and you think this is never going to go around the corner, and that wing does so much, you have to trust in the process that the whole thing is designed to go around fast left-hand corners.
No, it's phenomenal.
I went with Gary Rush. In 99, I went with Gary Rush in the two-seater. And so that's, you know, people say, I went with Brett Loadsman. I go, I went with the Master Blaster.
Yeah. No,
sorry, Phil, but I was a Rushy fan back in the day.
You've gone with the best.
Well, I ever know, and we've both done it, we've been in V8 supercars.
Yep.
And also the sprint cars. But, the sprint cars led the V8s for dead on that experience, sitting in there, just hanging on, and the noise and that type of thing.
I went in a NASCAR with Neville Lance and also George Elliott around Barbagallo Raceway back in the day. And I've been around in a couple of supercars at Eastern Creek. And Brooke took me in a Proton Satria GTI at 220 k's an hour around Sydney Motorsport Park. But the brakes for the NASCAR was what blew me away. Like, I thought, this thing's not going to stop. How are we going to stop when we get to this corner? But I get a little bit, in supercars and circuit racing, I feel it's a bit like this. You're sort of wishy-washy a little bit. I don't like that momentum feeling. I get a bit of, not motion sickness, but I don't enjoy it as much as the sprint car where you're really just like,
you're just hanging
bang, bang in the corners. Theoretically, if you want to get a sponsor involved in sprint cars, you could put them in a two-seater and then you hand them the checkbook after their 5 laps.
Where do I sign?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. You spoke about your kids there briefly, mate. 4 boys. A couple of them I see on your Instagram and so forth. They're with social media and they're doing their things behind the scenes. Yeah. That must be a proud moment for you.
Yeah, isn't it funny how, and I'm sure that you'd be the same with your dad and with your dad, that, you know, in business, someone will say, oh, you're following in your dad's footsteps, you know, and you go, and it's a great honour when you're the kid hearing that. And people say to me, oh, wow, Liam's following in your footsteps. And I say, no, he's in his own steps.
He's creating his own history.
But the reality is that, yes, he was making, Liam, my eldest boy, has been making ads with me since he was 3 years old, you know, on the radio. Cute little kids' voices and stuff, doing Speedway ads. And so he announces at Avalon Raceway, and he does the announcing for the Victorian Modified Production Series, the VMPA. And he does PR for both those things as well. And he races karts, and Connor races karts. And they've all done commentary at some point with me. So I'm tremendously, tremendously proud of those boys, because my Aunger name, I'm the last in my generation. So years ago, I used to say to Dad, geez, you know, like, I'm the only boy in the Aungers left here. If I don't reproduce the goods here, the name will die. And now I have 4 sons, and Dad goes, I'm pretty sure you solved that that problem. So
yeah, absolutely.
Look, and Riley, my second boy, he's not a Speedway person at all. He's there. He went to Knoxville with me last year, and he loves racing. He loves what I do. But he had a photo with Tony Stewart and Donnie Schatz, who are the 2 gods of the sport. And he was standing there like this. Okay, and Liam, his older brother, was like, really?
Can you believe it?
Like Riley gets a photo with those guys. But Riley will go to America next year in the American college system and play soccer.
Okay.
So he'll play soccer for a living. That's
what uni's he going to over there?
Well, we're trying to pick those. He's got a scholarship selection group that we work with here at I360 here in Australia, and they're going to place him. They'll give us a few options, and then we'll pick which one he goes to.
How old's Riley?
So he'll be 18 this coming August.
What an experience, eh?
2 years, hopefully 3 or 4 years in America, and then hopefully go on to a professional football career.
Wow.
Look, I love the fact he's not Speedway. It's important that they have their own lives. Speedway's consumed my life, but I'm really pleased that him and his youngest brother Darcy, they're both very soccer orientated.
Good on 'em.
Connor and Liam are racing.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt the podcast. We have a word from our sponsor. KRGS Doors Security Mobile Trellis Barrier allows you to have a versatile trackless barrier at any length. Standing 2 meters in height and having no floor or head tracks eliminates any trip hazards or the need for bulkheads. Simply wheel the security mobile trellis barrier away when not needed. Perfectly suited when you need to prevent access to a certain section of the property, such as food courts or when parts of the shopping centre are closed. If you'd like more information, visit www.krgsdoors.com.au or call 1800 897 822. Now back to the podcast.
On that side of things with the commentary and making it, who do you seek advice from?
I think that you're always listening and you're always learning. And if you're not, then it'd be like your business. If you just went, okay, this is the way we do it and we're never going to go outside those boundaries, then I think Gene Simmons from KISS, and that's probably been my greatest interview in my life, was with my childhood heroes, KISS.
Wow.
Gene Simmons once said, if you hold your face too close to the mirror, you don't see anything. Right, so if you just walk around in a dream going, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this, reality is you'll always do what you do well, but you may never do it better. So I listen to a lot of sports broadcasting and other forms of sport and think, wow, that was cool what he said there, or well, I didn't like that, or wow. It's hard not to be critical at times because I know what it's like when you listen online. It never seems to match the excitement of, what's going on. When you're in the crowd, it makes sense. So I try to listen to everyone, to be honest with you. And try to get something from everybody, whether that's good or bad, in the way that they broadcast. And I remember in 92, when I first went to America and I was trying to commentate like my boss, Con Migro and Chuck Redmond, those guys who had voices that could strip paint. They had phenomenally strong voices. And they would be, and get you so riled up. And I went to Daytona and saw the Pepsi 400. And Rusty Wallace had this huge crash down the back straight in the Miller Genuine Draft Car. And Ken Squires is one of the guns of the TV commentary. He goes, Rusty Wallace, spinning, crashing, rolling, 190 mile an hour. That's all he said. And it still gives me goosebumps. He said so much with so few words. And that's what really impacted me. My first trip to America was, man, because these guys were announced like 15.957. 15.957. We'd be like 15.957. So we commentate a lot faster in Australia generally. So I learnt to slow it down a little bit where I could. So my love of theatre and wanting to create euphoria and the iPhone lights and things all came from my love of KISS, from the theatrics.
Have you seen the difference, and that's a good point you make, the difference between race callers in horse racing in Australia compared to America?
Yes.
Very, like you just mentioned then, very similar. They slow it down, like there's no hype.
Yes.
Where, you'd listen to the Australian commentators with horse racing, like as they get closer to the post, obviously the volume and the tempo and that sort of picks up, where in America, the horse race callers, they're just, from the jump, when they jump out of the gate to the, there's no difference in their tone or their the way they present it.
And there's no right or wrong way either. Like commentary is very much like art. It's all subjective. It's whether you get excited or you got statistics, whether you want to talk about, Johnny Gibson, who's got the number one job in the world and just did 2,000 races consecutively last week. He will tell you incredible statistics on the last time Donnie Schatz raced here, how many starts he's had, how many wins.
He does all his homework.
I couldn't tell you any of that because I'm lazy. I like people, and I'll tell you more about that. I heard that Mick Sala last week swam 50 laps.
What about, I love listening to your commentary, and obviously whether I'm at the track or I watch on Clay Per View if we don't get a chance to go to the track, but just sayings like, we go green at Valvoline, or the guy's PI 55, or just those sort of ones. And then one of the ones I use is as dark as 2 a.m. How do you come up with those? From listening?
Pinch them.
Yeah, of course.
I just pinch them. Imitation is absolutely the greatest form of flattery, isn't it? Just things that you hear people say. There's a little boy that goes to the Speedway. He doesn't go much now because he's moved to casino in the northwest. But little Andrew, his dad Rick is an amazing dad, and Andrew's a special needs little boy, and he's a great fan of Stewie and I. And he always wants me to say, "Let's get dirty for 30," and so he will scream that out. You know, he gets a little TV remote control, and his dad will send me videos of him saying, "Let's get dirty for 30," and so everybody has their own, patter. Gavin White says that incredible thing. It's time to saddle up, Warrnambool, because the time and talk is finally finished.
Yeah.
So everybody's got their little thing
catch cry
that they say, and you just hope that those little things, come along. It's hard when people hear you all the time. Those things can get a bit tedious.
Yeah.
When I'm saying that all the time, the PI 55 stuff, and it's only because I want to say that he's pissed off.
Pissed, yeah.
But you don't want the kids to necessarily hear that that's what you're referring to.
Yeah.
So you just got to be a little bit clever with how you say.
Yeah, of course. But I remember one there was Murcott and Brazier one night, and they come together sort of in turn 3 after the race.
Yes.
And he was just, I love the one. What's the other one? He's just trying to add him on Facebook.
Yeah. Well, you got to find subtle little ways of, and I had a really amazing experience with Steve Brazier where, when I first started doing the infield microphone thing at Parramatta with Steve Raymond, and there was Terry McCall crashed Gary Brazier out, and there was just wreckage everywhere. And Steve Brazier says not much at all. He's a very quiet man, and he's an icon and a legend, and I'm in awe of him. And he was looking around at the damage, and I'm standing down there, and Steve Raymond goes, "Wade, what's going on down there?" And I'm like, "Well, Steve, I'm just down here. There's a lot of damage." And Steve Brazier looked at me like he wanted to say something, and he kind of gave me a bit of a...
Yeah.
So I walked over. I said, "Steve, I'm down here with Steve Brazier, and Steve, what are your thoughts at the moment?" He goes, "That guy's a fucking dick." And I was like, "All right, Steve Raymond, back to you, mate." I was like, "Oh God,
Jesus!"
Here I am telling Steve Raymond, "It's okay. The infield mic thing works beautifully."
Led with me chin,
and Steve Adler rolls out with the F-bomb right off the top. But that's the beauty of my sport, our sport. It's passion, and it's not controlled, and it's not stayed, and it's not measured. That's what I love about it. It's anything can happen.
So we get to see you at Valvoline and Speedway at Parramatta. Where's the best spot that you like to commentate? Do you like to commentate from the infield?
Yeah.
Do you like to be up in the box?
No, the infield.
You reckon the infield's the best spot?
Yeah, because you see things from that centre you don't see from the outside. You'll see a guy with no tear-offs left.
Yeah.
You'll see a guy trying to look like that. You'll see him trying to reach for something in the car or pull the belts down extra hard. Or when they roll past you, sometimes under caution, they'll give you this little one, or you get one of these from the boys, or they'll throw you a shaka or stuff like that. I love seeing the anger. I love seeing the gauges getting hot.
Yeah.
There's nothing like being down at ground level.
And obviously us in the stand or in the box, we can't necessarily see all that.
Yeah.
So you're giving us a bird's eye view.
And I think that's something that happened organically, but I'm really proud of the fact that it was part of something that I did. It was years ago, just announcing from the middle was unheard of. You announced from the booth, and you never saw what the announcer looked like. You just heard him.
Yeah.
So when I was a little kid, I didn't know what Con Margo looked like or Mike Raymond. I saw him on TV, but you heard these voices. So it was one night at Speedway City, and Robbie Farr was leading an A-main for World Series, and it was a red light stoppage, and he was parked on the back straight, and I was in the middle, and I always turn the mic off first. I never just walk up and assume.
No, of course not.
And Robbie was sitting there, and I turned the mic off, and I just went and crouched down next to him, and he goes, "How are we looking?" I said, no, you got him covered, mate. You've got probably, 6 or 7 cars on him. I go, "Can we chat?" He goes, "Yeah, mate." So I turned the mic on. "All right, Robbie, we're here with..." And as he's talking to me, I'm sitting there going, when I was a little kid on the other side of the fence. I never dreamed that I'd be on the other side of the fence, crouching down next to the feature race leader,
Mid-race.
talking to him about... And you don't do that with everybody, because not everybody wants to do that. But that's the thing I love about that role now is it's become a ringmaster role, not just a race caller role.
That's one of the things that's exciting. Like I know after we've had a crash or on the red, but you and both Stu McCarthy, if there's a crash, you're straight over to it. How's the driver? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then we're on red, and you still get that opportunity to talk to. This is mid-race. Like this is it's fantastic.
It's a privilege.
Mate, it's outstanding. And just to hear that commentary rather than sitting back. But yeah, to talk, like you said, you can obviously some drivers you can talk to that are interested, and probably the older guys too, because the younger blokes are probably trying to still stay focused and on their job at hand. But
you also know who's good. You get to know who's good and bad with that, Clayton, right?
Who's good speakers and who's not. And, yeah, absolutely.
And I had a situation with Mark and Mick when Aaron Reitzel was here, and things were pretty fiery in the pits. And Mick had come back in, and there was damage to the car, and there was a lot of stuff going on. And Mick was very aloof, which he's not normally. Mick is absolutely one of my go-to guys.
Yes.
And went to interview him, and he was seriously PI55'd about something.
Yeah.
And I only realised as I was interviewing how angry he was.
Yeah.
So sometimes you go into a situation like that, and Mark was PI55'd as well, and you suddenly go, I don't need to make these guys look like dickheads.
No.
Here. That's not my role.
No.
My role is to get the emotion, but not make people go, oh, geez, what's their problem?
Yeah.
And there's a balance between the heroes and villains thing you want to project.
Correct.
Without making enemies of people. And later, Mark and Mick both said, Wade, I'm really sorry. We didn't mean to be so abrupt with that, but we had a lot going on.
The same things happen with us. And, like, obviously, we're sponsors. You know what I mean? We get a pretty free run around their stuff and their truck and so forth. And they're always so obliging.
Yeah.
But same thing. Like, we know when to pick our mark and ask questions and so forth. If they've had a wreck or something, you know what I mean? There's time. Just sit back, be patient. You'll get your chance to talk to Mark or Mick or Aaron's a different cat.
Wow, yeah.
You know what I mean? You can talk to him before hours and after hours, but in between, mate, he's just
game face.
He's locked in.
Yeah, well,
that's his focus.
If you walked into one of your guys working on one of your machines here, and tapped him on the shoulder in the middle of a really intricate, fabricating process, he'd be the same way.
Absolutely, head down.
And Aaron is, not only is his job, but it could cost him his life.
Yeah.
So they are intense, and every position on the track represents more money or less money.
Yeah.
So he struggled with our intricacies with our rules. Our rules are very different in Australia. In America, it's like, let them sort it out themselves. There's no primary cause rule. If we go down to turn 1 and you spin me out, then the next week, I spin you out or I punch you.
Yeah.
Whereas in Australia, there's an official blows a whistle and someone's going to the rear. Americans don't have that. So that's where things are different in our world.
Yeah.
Just on that where you said you got the chance to crouch down beside the car or you get to speak to these drivers, that probably comes back to you a lot as well, earning that respect, knowing that you're not going to put them in that position of, hey, I'm not going to make you look silly. I just want to ask a couple of questions and go from there. The other thing I love about Speedway is having the opportunity after the race is over, you can go into the pits and the drivers are there signing autographs and they can have a chat and, hey, what do you think of that race? Oh, yeah, la-di-da-di-da. But it's like any other speed or racing, you don't get that opportunity. Like V8's there behind closed doors. No, don't talk to me.
Get close. You know, we're a sponsor of V8 and you can't even get close to them.
It's
well, we're still very much the everyday man sport, though.
Yeah, for sure.
And I love that about it. What you're saying makes me feel really good about our industry, that we are that we are accessible, we're grassroots. And yes, there's some guys that are not as easy to approach, and there's often times you don't pick your times to go in those environments. But I love that and I love that people are still little kids around our sport, like Garth Tander, the massive sprint car fan, massive. James Moffat, Jack Perkins, Tim Slade, all those guys, huge Speedway fans,
It's good to see all those drivers, and they're all so willing. You get the little kids in the pits, and and particularly these days with phones, and they're all always happy to take a photo or sign an autograph. I haven't seen too many of the drivers knock anything back, you know what I mean? Because next week they want them to come back and wear one of their shirts.
Well, there's a great story that I tell. Every year I do a thing with a Speedway Australia Rising Star program where I mentor their group for 2 hours about marketing, public speaking, how to handle themselves.
That's a good idea.
How to approach the track in advance when they're racing to get some publicity and things like that. And I relay the story of David Anderson, who's one of our sports legends, whose son Grant races these days. And David was racing, I think it was at Wagga at his home track. And they were what was perceived their home track. They're from Albury. And he was pretty well by himself. He didn't have much help. And there was a guy leaning to the back fence of the pits there and said, mate, can I give you a hand? And I went, mate, I don't know what you can do, but you're more than welcome to. If you want to come and grab a bucket and help push and whatever. Anyway, the guy ended up becoming lifelong friends with Ando, and his name was Don Harper. And Don Harper was Wagga Mobile Cranes. And Wagga Mobile Cranes became an iconic sponsor of the Anderson family. Even after Don passed away, it was willed in his will that the family would continue to sponsor the Andersons. So what Dave didn't know was the bloke that was just randomly standing behind had the gold credit card.
Yeah.
That was quite prepared to give Ando any support he possibly needed because he didn't blow him off.
Great story.
So I always say to these young guys, you never know who you're talking to.
Exactly right.
So, and it comes back to not being a bad guy. I always say to the kids, don't be a bad guy. Unless you want to wear that shirt forever, don't say, that guy just crashed me out and he's a dick. Go, oh, my parents have put so much money into this. I'm so sorry for my crew. There's a lot of work we can do. I just want to thank my sponsors, KRGS, blah, blah, Superman Energy Drinks, etc. And be the good guy, because someone on the hill might go, you know what? That sounds like a nice young man. I'm going to find out more about him. And suddenly you just never know where that can go.
Well, that's funny you say that, because how we got involved with Mick Saller and the Saller Motorsport, I knew Mark Saller because he was one of our customers.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
And we've got a good relationship, shop fitting and so forth. And obviously we got the same, we're both Dick Johnson fans, we're both Ford fans, you know what I mean? So Mick was racing go-karts, and I got an opportunity to go down to Wollongong there at Port Kembla Grange.
Yes, yeah.
And watch Mick a couple of times with go-karts and so forth. I mean, he won a couple of titles there. Yeah. Anyway, I didn't know that they were going to leave go-karts and go straight into sprint cars. Anyway, I got this prospectus across my desk looking for sponsorship, and it was put together by Mick Saller.
Yep.
And this is kids the age of 16 at this stage.
Smart operator. Yep.
Mate, it was so professional.
Yep.
It was unbelievably professionally done, put together, worded like
the sellers do everything.
Like they do, mate. They want to be, they're Rolls Royce at everything they do.
Yeah, they are.
But, mate, it was just so professionally put together, and, mate, it got me in straight away.
Yep.
Obviously, we're Speedway fans, but to now have that opportunity to go to the track and see the cars and have our branding on the podium and meet people like you and get involved with people like you and Valvoline Raceway and so forth. But that was the start of it, mate. Just to get that prospectus across my desk, I thought, well, you'd be mad not to.
From like little things, big things grow.
Absolutely. This kid's New South Wales title holder, Australian title holder. You never know, you know what I mean, where it could end up. And now he's been in sprint cars, he's 24 years of age. You know, he's been 8 years, so it's fantastic to see him climb the ladder.
He's doing a great job.
Yeah, sure is.
It's funny you mentioned that sort of don't be a dickhead story. There's one, I'm a bit of a basketball fan, and there's one between at the Lakers, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was doing some practice, and this young kid come out to sort of, hey, can I have an autograph and a photo? And he brushed him off.
Yep.
And a young Magic Johnson was sitting down the other end. Mm-hmm. So the kid went down to him, and Magic spent some time with him, shooting hoops and signed some stuff. Anyway, about 10 years later, Magic got approached by a sponsor who wanted to give him X gazillion dollars.
Yep.
And the story goes, the owner of the sponsor was this kid's father, and remembered 10 years ago when Magic spent time with him.
He said, why did you choose me? And he said, well, you spent time with my kid that time, and we didn't go with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar because he brushed us. We went with you.
Yeah.
And you know yourself as a parent, when you walk into a shop, if the shop assistant addresses your children, that's half the thing. And I remember when my boys were little, anyone who was half a decent salesman would kneel down in front of my kids and talk to my kids, and they'd have me.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, you put a kid in a race car at the end of the night. Do you want to have a photo with the car? Here's a sticker. Here's a poster. That's half the battle.
Next time they come to Speedway, guess what number they're looking out for? I've sat in that car.
Yeah. I want their shirt. I want to buy their merch, that type of thing.
So you watched The Last Dance?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Isn't it an incredible study in just a single-mindedness and a driven need to dominate and be the greatest of all time, not necessarily influence people in a positive fashion all the way? Like, he was a hard man. All he wanted to be was the best, and if you're in the way, you're in the way.
You either came with me, or if you don't want to be part of it, see you later.
Probably the thing that I love the most about that series is the way that was put together. What a phenomenal job those producers. You never know who those producers are, those editors.
You don't. And the other thing is, Wade, that last year that they got the Chicago Bulls was what, 98?
Yeah.
It's now 2020. It's 22 years ago since that happened. And those producers must have gone to Jordan every year and says, can we put it out?
Yes.
Can we put it out? Can we put it out now? Do you think this is the year? He's waited 22 years to put that out.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if it's been timing because of Kobe Bryant and LeBron James to say, hey, I'm still the best. I'm still regarded as the best, and this is why.
No. MJ's the man.
Yeah.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a shadow of a doubt. Without a shadow. But just all the other little stories behind it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The Scottie Pippens and the
Jerry
Phil Jackson, the Jerry Krause, you know what I mean? We don't know the story.
Carol Baskin and Jerry Krause are the two most hated people on the planet. Strange world, isn't it?
But and even the Dennis Rodmans, just all them little stories behind it. What's the coach of is it Steve Kerr?
Yes.
Coach, yeah, just all those little stories, you know what I mean? Just
I'll tell you a fantastic book to read, boys. It's called Shoe Dog.
Yes.
Have you read
Nike story.
Unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah.
What a book
There's another. Did you watch the 30 for 30 documentaries?
No.
Mate, do yourself a favour. Have a look at those. 30 for 30. They interview, I can't think of the guy's name. I only watched it about a month ago. It's the story of how the Nike started with the tennis shoes and with the basketball. So the
running shoes was where it all started.
Yeah, so this guy...
Phil Jackson was his name. I'm pretty sure it's the same name as the basketball coach.
No, it's an unusual name.
Okay.
But it's the story about Nike, how they started with basketball and so forth. And they signed the college coaches.
Yes.
They paid the college coaches $10,000.
Yep.
And gave the players free shoes. So all the kids in the colleges and then all in the high schools. And then the college coaches are coming along saying, I want to sign that kid. I want to sign that kid. He said, well, if you want to sign him, you got to go through me. So he became the go-to, the manager between.
Smart thinking.
And then that's how they signed Jordan.
Yep.
And the Jordan thing with the Air Jordan.
He didn't want to go to Jordan. He didn't want to go to Nike.
Sign with Adidas.
That's right.
He wanted to sign with Adidas.
And then his mum said, no, you're going to go to this meeting.
What sold him was they were going to name a shoe after him.
Yep.
Well, the sales in that shoe just went
crazy, isn't it?
Much, much bigger than what they imagined it would do. And then the funny thing is the guy from Nike, this guy I'm talking about, I can't think of his bloody name, but he ended up getting the arse and he went to Adidas.
Wow.
And tried to do the same with Adidas and they signed Kobe Bryant.
Wow.
So it was just a thing, just the same thing over again, but it was with Kobe Bryant. But yeah, have a look at it.
Okay.
When we finish it, I'll Google.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a good story.
You mentioned before Adam Brand, who is the country singer.
Yeah.
Who has a song out about the Speedway, and it uses your voice in the commentary. How did that come about?
Adam, I didn't actually know Adam in Perth. He's an old Perth boy. His real name's Adam Bruno. And we were standing in the pits at Albany Speedway with a mutual friend of mine. And there was a little quarter midget there, black quarter midget with a big yellow number 5. And there was this beautiful woman standing next to it, with long black hair and painted on jeans. I couldn't even see her from the front. All I could see was from the back. And I said to Scott Glazebell, I said, wow, who is that? And he said, that's Adam Bruno's girlfriend. And I go, who's Adam Bruno? He goes, the guy that drives that little quarter midget. That was it. I never thought about it again. And I reckon that was 94, 95, if it was even that. So you fast forward to 98 and I'm living in Sydney and I get a phone call at our office in Tilapia because David Lander owned Speedway Racing News magazine as well. So we had that as well to do.
Yeah.
And Lady Kate, the receptionist, says, there's a phone call for you, Wade. I pick it up and go, hi, this is Wade. He goes, Wade, you don't know me. My name's Adam Bruno. And I went, black quarter midget, yellow number 5, awesome looking girlfriend. And he goes, that's me. And he goes, mate, I'm a country singer now and I'm moving over from Perth. I've got an idea for a song. Can I come and see you? And I said, sure. No worries. Always good to see a West Aussie. So he rolled up and he had a packet of Tim Tams with him. And we had Tim Tam bongs, which, to clarify, anyone doesn't know what that is, it's just you nibble out the opposing corners of a Tim Tam biscuit and suck the coffee or
through. Hot
chocolate. We're pretty badass. I think it was Milo back then. And we sucked that through there. Anyway, we went out the back in my boss's car, his old Fairlane, again, the Fords, and he put this cassette in. And he said, this bit here coming up here that's just got guitar, that's where you're going to commentate.
And
I said, what? And he used to go to Claremont for years as a little kid. He had the same sort of upbringing that I did. And he said, I want to write a song about sprint cars. I've been sitting on my couch in Lane Cove and I've written this thing. This ain't no Hollywood Star Wars. It's the real deal open wheel, long before there was Jamie Veal. And he said, this is where you're going to commentate. He said, I'm telling you now, my manager thinks I'm crazy. And he's already got the guitar solo to go over the top. He said, I don't care. We're doing this. Do you want to do it? I said, yeah, sounds like fun.
Let's have a shot at it.
And he said to me, I'm not worried about who you put in it. He said, I do want to mention a couple of people. And other than that, you just do what you want to do. Now, in 98, when I was 97, 98, when I was living in Bunbury, the Cricky boys were killed, Daryl and Jason Cricky. So the reference to, oh, yeah, that one's for the boys was about Daryl and Jason Cricky. And Ron Cricky was one of Adam's heroes. So he wanted him mentioned. Now, Adrian Marr gets a mention in there, which might seem pretty random. Adrian and I were playing indoor cricket with Adam and Darren Jenkins.
Yep.
There was a bunch of us, Craig Brady.
I've heard the story about the indoor cricket.
We're all playing indoor cricket together. So that's how he got a mention now.
Was that in Sydney or in Perth?
Yeah, no, Sydney. Wetherill Park.
Okay.
So Adam was involved in that little cricket team, so he wanted some mentions. And Kelly Linigan, he was a fan of Kelly, so he wanted her in there. And we rolled down to this little studio in Port Botany or something like that, and I met Adam's manager, very sensible man. And you could almost see him with his arms folded watching like,
this is not going to work.
I'll get the guitar solo ready.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at them through the glass of the production thing. I've got the headphones on like we are here. And they wanted me to do a level check. And a level check is where you'll talk normally like this, and then I'll go, give me a big one. And that's when you go as loud as you can so that you don't peak. And then I'll set the levels. They said, give us a level check. And I didn't know really what I was going to do. I just went, if this doesn't turn you on, folks, you haven't got a switch. And did the Friday night of Speedway night at the National Capital Speed, which is what my boss, Con Micro, would say. Anyway, they went, this is, saw Graham tip his head back. And anyway, they said, all right, let's do the bit that you're going to do. And I had loosely written down the names, and that was it. Well, the music played, the spot came, and I just ripped into it. Gary Rush, the living legend of sprint car racing, and just ripped and stopped, and it fitted in that spot.
Perfect.
On the first go. Bang. And they just sat there, and I looked through the window, and Adam is dancing around the thing. He knew.
He knew straight away.
He's punching the air, and his manager's got this look on his face like, what just happened? Like, he was so confused, and he was like, anyway, they decided to use the If This Doesn't Turn You On, folks, which was a level check. They made that the intro to the song. That was never supposed to be
in it.
So, and then the first take we did was what stuck, and it went huge. And Adam said to me, hey, it's Saturday, want us to do Dirt Track Cowboys on Hey. And I'm like, oh, sure they do, mate. And he goes, no, I'm telling you, they want to put Max Dumsey's sprint car in there. They want to build a little set for us. You're going to come down and do Hey, it's Saturday.
Really?
And kids these days have no idea what Hey, it's Saturday was. But, you know,
it was
for
phenomenal.
us, it was iconic.
It was one of the biggest
every
shows.
Saturday night.
Now, it was filmed on Thursdays.
Yeah.
It was recorded live on Thursdays.
Okay.
And we went down to do it, and they set us up a really cool little set with little lights, and they put Max's car in there, and Drew Cruck plays guitar on that in that band, because the music for the song was pre-recorded, was the dub. So the band is just doing what they're doing and they're not playing. And Drew Cruck was Mr. Titan Garage's Reeve's son. He was playing the guitar in that band. Anyway, we all said, we'll do the rehearsal, and our bloke came up with a clipboard and a headset and the whole bit. He goes, all right, boys, we'll do the rehearsal in a second. And Drew Cruck goes, this is Lucky Phil. I was like, that's Lucky Phil. Like, you know, when you watch the show, he's always on the show. So we said, you know, when we did the rehearsal, we went down the street and we blew about $20 on Daytona video games. So we're pretty hardcore. We said, when we go back, we'll all high five before the curtain opens and we'll get each other pumped up. And, you know, it's like an audience of 3 million or something back then.
Yeah.
So we're standing back behind, and Wilbur Wild walks past, and Red Simons, all these guys backstage. We're like, Shane Warne was on the show, and we're like, wow. Next minute, they're hustling us. All right, boys, get ready. Curtains are closed. We all just stood there and went,
froze.
I was like, oh my God. And I had to be the first person to say anything.
Yeah.
And I remember just going, just don't screw this up. Just don't screw this up. So bang, curtains open, away we go. And I looked at Adam, and Adam had cameras just swarming. It was quite surreal. He had cameras swarming around him. In the end, we rocked it. One hit, just rocked it. And it was such a rush. And that was huge for our sport. Adam Brand has done more for our sport of Speedway nationally in different circles than anyone through his passion and love for it. So, and it's a great story. And his manager now loves it. He's not his manager anymore, but at the time he was like, oh, I get it now.
I understand.
That's a good story.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to use that voiceover of "This doesn't turn you on"? You don't have a switch as our preview to our podcast.
Well, that'll get cut in for sure.
David Lander was the guy, my boss in Sydney. He was the one that would say, "If this doesn't turn you on, you haven't got a switch." And so Con would say, "Friday night is Speedway night, the National Capital of Speed," in his commentary. So I just mixed the two together, doing a bit of a piss take, and now it's become.
Mike Raymond was always be there.
be there. And I have deliberately not done that. I will never make an ad. I'll say get there.
Yeah.
But a lot of people will write me a script to voice something and they'll put be there, and I'll never do it because it's his.
That's his catch cry.
Absolutely.
It's what he's remembered.
And as you said, you want to be your own person and have your own identity in that type of sense.
Yeah, I just have too much respect for Mike and what he did to try and do that.
Mate, best drivers you've ever seen?
I was thinking about this before. There's a couple of people in Western Australia that are just going to be iconic to me forever. A guy called Michael Figliamini that we called the Magic Man, who tragically passed away several years ago, over 10 years ago at the Perth Motorplex. Not a race accident, just had a freak situation with his heart. Figgy was just a phenomenal craftsman. He built his cars, he set up his cars, he raced his cars. There was a guy called Ian Bonds at Bradford who was a phenomenally courageous man who had cancer that raced sprint cars in WA, part of a real incredible WA dynasty. There's people like that will stick in my head forever. There's Mick McKeon, Mighty Mick, who was the greatest solo rider for me, motorcycles, and Dennis Nash, the great sidecar rider. There's a guy in America called Jack Hordenchild, who's the wild child who I first saw at Eldora in 92 and thought, that's my guy.
He's been out here at Parramatta Velvet.
A few years ago he raced with us.
Is it his son that rides?
Sheldon.
Yeah, Sheldon, yeah.
They're a phenomenal family. So even though I mentioned those names, to be honest with you, Drew, everybody who drives or rides has my respect.
Yeah.
Because those things are just, whether it's a sprint car or a speed car or a AMCA or a legend car or whatever, they have my respect. So some of the greatest Speedway motorcycle riders in the world I've got to announce, and the greatest sprint car driver in the world, Donnie Schatz and Steve Kinzer and those guys, they're phenomenal. But I don't know that I really have any favourites per se. Also,
Clayton asked your best position that you like to commentate from. What's your favourite track to commentate at?
The next one. Anytime. I can turn a microphone on, whether it's the first time at a place or the 500th time. The Warrnambool Classic, I love announcing at, just because of the carnival atmosphere. Any time I've announced at Parramatta now will be a privilege for me, particularly. The times I got to announce at Claremont Speedway. Claremont will forever be my nirvana. That is my...
That's your home.
Yeah, without any doubt. The Knoxville Raceway, to go every year to do the Knoxville Nationals, is a huge honour for me. To announce at Eldora over the years. I got to announce an English motorcycle race at Kings Lynn in the UK, to do the Speedway Grand Prix at Western Springs in New Zealand. So to be honest with you, Parramatta will always be very special to me. The Warrnambool Classic is my favourite event to announce apart from the Knoxville Nationals. But Claremont Speedway is, that's still my home. Still my home, yeah.
You talk about, obviously, Parramatta. And it's been in the news of recent. This season is going to be our last, this upcoming September 2020. Is there any word, apart from what the government are saying, are we moving to Eastern Creek? Is it confirmation?
Well, I don't know that there's 100% confirmation, but I think that the government is very much, I believe they're calling for tenders for the earth moving process and for the earthworks and things like that. So to be honest, I think that that's all going ahead. We definitely have to be gone by June. I think without any doubt that's coming.
The calendar came out a couple of weeks ago, and it's from September through to May.
Yes.
So obviously you're going to try and utilise every little inch of it that can be done. So just hope to Christ that the track and all that's up and running for the following season, so there's no delay or people downtime or anything like that.
The most important thing from all this, Clayton, in particular, and I learnt this with Claremont Speedway, when Claremont Speedway closed down in 2000, they built an incredible new $20 million venue called the Perth Motorplex. A lot of people didn't cross over. A lot of the diehard Claremont fans said it'll never be the same. And I bet your dad has ovals that he went to that are no longer around.
Well, I know, for example, we were at the last night at the showground.
Yep.
We were at the last night at Liverpool.
Yep.
I'm going to be at the last night at Parramatta.
Yep.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just things like that. It's memories and so forth.
Well, the romance of it and the nostalgia and that sort of stuff. But it stopped a lot of people going to the new venue because they said it'll never be Claremont. And I have I do that sometimes too. I shouldn't do that. So what's really important right now is everyone loves every lap at Parramatta and then takes the sport into the new era with the new place.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people won't cross over to the new one, and the sport needs to survive in Sydney. So that's what's critical right now.
Well, we need it to survive in Sydney, mate, because there's no other track.
Correct.
Speedway fans like myself, we've got to travel to the next probably closest one's Nowra, you know what I mean, to go and watch any Speedway. And there's no sort of Speedway of sprint cars and that down there. But for us to go and watch anything, we've got to go to Queensland or Warrnambool or somewhere like that to go and see something. You know what I mean? So we definitely need something here in Sydney.
Definitely.
There's a spot there for it. Obviously, Parramatta's created its own history.
Yeah.
And Eastern Creek will create its own eventually as well.
Yeah, correct.
Away from commentating, mate, how do you relax?
Spending as much time as I can with my sons. To be honest, they've lived with their mum predominantly for the last, since 2008. They've lived full time with their mum.
12 years, yeah.
Yeah, they've spent, obviously a lot of time in with me in that period, but I'm very grateful that their mum is a very committed and very 150% with the boys. They've always, I've never had to fear for their welfare or their safety, and it's allowed me to live my life. You know, like here I am driving up and down the road at the moment, you know, in New South Wales when they live in Mildura. So I'm being very lucky like that. Photography is my big passion. That's something that's really become quite addictive for me on a number of levels. Live music, photography, and watching my boys play sport or being around my boys are probably my favourite way to do ththings.
I believe you have just recently started another business venture, Methanol Moonshine. I'm just looking at a bottle here. The first thing I noticed was 40% alcohol. Can you tell us a bit more about Methanol Moonshine?
What I can tell you is that bottle...
This is straight methanol. You can...
No. That bottle will look fantastic with a number 56 sprint car inside it.
It would, mate, wouldn't it? I was looking at that marketing...
We can make that label into anything we want, by the way. So this came about through the COVID situation. My friend owns a distillery in Mildura, a boutique distillery. He makes gin and vodka and rum and things like that and whiskies. And he created this very uniquely branded vodka called Stay the At Home Vodka. And they literally made a label with F and the asterisk K. And the idea was to just order it all online. So mail it out. So you didn't have to go to a bottle shop because you couldn't anyway. So my mate Steve said to me, with your stuff you're doing with your social media and stuff, you maybe should push our vodka and I'll work you into some sort of deal if you can, I'll give you a code or something so people will order through you.
Yeah.
And I thought about it. I drink vodka, but it's not really something I relate to. So I thought, can I come and see you tomorrow? I might have an idea. And I thought Moonshine dates back to the very early days of NASCAR. That's how NASCAR started. So I thought there's actually a relevance to our industry and there's nothing around in Australia like that. So I said to Timo the next day, I said, mate, can you make Moonshine? And he goes, oh, absolutely. I said, what about if we create Methanol Moonshine? Because again, the alliteration I got from my right? So vroom vodka, racing rum, methanol moonshine. I wanted that MM. So our fuel is obviously that. So I said, mate, can we make a label that's a bit like that? He came up with the idea of putting the photo inside the label. Brilliant. And it's hit a huge chord with Speedway fans because they see it as specific to our sport. So we've probably, by the time I get back to Mildura in a couple of days, there'll be 250 bottles or something I think we've sold in the last week and a half.
Yeah, good on you.
So it's definitely got a market to it. We want to get into porridge at events and things. We want to make Mount Panorama Moonshine. We want to make Manjimup 15,000 Moonshine. We want to make Moto Shine for motocross, Nitro Shine for drags.
Yeah, good.
So the idea is to make something that's very unique and specific. And
you can buy all this online at the moment?
Yeah, just click on methanolmoonshine.com.au and we can post it out literally if you don't get it on the side of the road for me now.
We haven't had a sample of it yet, but there's a bottle here. But yeah.
So mix it with ginger beer.
Ginger
beer is really good. Mix it with like blood orange. Mix it with beer.
Yeah.
You can actually take a couple of sips out of your beer, put a shot in top with your thumb over the beer, turn it upside down, and then it's called a snake bite.
Right.
Espresso moontinis, not martinis.
Right.
You can put that in. I'll send you the long list of the cocktails we've come up with.
Ginger beer, that sounds all right.
It's really smooth. That's the problem. Everyone likes CC and dry these days, right?
Yes.
So mix that with dry ginger ale and ice. Yes.
Okay.
That's the way to go.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
We'll have to give it a test.
I'll just read the back of it, and I probably won't do it justice like you would in your voice.
Go for it.
But it's Speedway is an assault on your senses. It's loud and intoxicating, draws you in and makes your head spin. It's got an air of mystery, a degree of unpredictability. It's a place where anything can happen, just like the contents of this bottle. A night at the skids an experience. You can't help but tell your friends about it. You're affected in some way or in many ways. You'll drag yourself back for more. You'll come back night after night, Methanol Moonshine and Speedway racing.
There's a lot of similarities, isn't there?
Absolutely.
It is intoxicating. I've always said that. Speedway is an assault on your senses.
So, yes, folks, do yourself a favour. Jump online and buy a bottle. You'll just be impressed by the bottle alone.
Yeah, the label's cool.
Brilliant.
Quite
Lovely.
good looking. Now, to wrap up the podcast, mate, we ask our fast 5 questions. It's just rapid fire, just to get to know you a little bit better.
Yep.
What would be your last meal?
Big fan of ribs. There's an amazing place in Kansas City that's this incredible little old building that's been there for over 100 years that I love to go to all the time. It has these things called burnt ends. And they're literally just like the nice, crispy, crunchy part of the brisket and stuff like that as well that I love. But I have to say probably my ex-wife's meatloaf. Isn't that a strange thing to say?
Wow. Yes. She's made an impression on you.
She has. Yes, true.
Have you been down to Fort Worth, Texas?
No.
Ribs down there, mate.
Yeah, Texans know how to do that, don't they?
Yeah. That's the place.
I think I just travel the world looking for ribs, I think, if I could.
There might be a show in that.
If the moonshine thing goes, yeah.
Man versus food type of scenario that...
God, I'd end up 50 stone if I was on that show.
Now, we may have already answered this question, but your drink of choice.
Yes. Yeah, Methanol Moonshine with as an espresso moontini or with ginger beer, thank you.
You put it in your coffee in the morning, mate, can you?
Absolutely. You get all sorts of creative ideas coming out of that. Makes the morning sales meeting a bit more lively.
Absolutely. Yes. You'd be jumping out of your skin to start with, wouldn't you?
I'd probably be asleep by about 10 o'clock having one of them.
That can work too.
What is the thing you're most afraid of?
So I definitely don't want to outlive my children. I don't want to bury my kids.
Yeah.
So I'd much rather that I'm well and truly somewhere else well before that happens to them, and I can't imagine anything worse.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that coming here. A lot of people have fears of, spiders and snakes, and I'm all about that too. But I do not want to be here when my kids aren't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you might have said when the curtains peel back on Hey Hate Saturday.
That was pretty scary. I got to tell you, Clado, that was pretty scary.
What is your favourite TV channel?
I probably like 7, mate. To be honest, I like the reality. I don't like reality TV. I hate reality TV. I hate MasterChef. I shouldn't say hate. I dislike everything that's all about elimination. I dislike that they create bullshit and drama and the Bachelor and all that crap. It really annoys me.
Big Brother and all that sort of shit.
It's just designed to make people feel anxious and tense and angry and react badly on social media. I'd much rather watch a show about truckers or about, people that've got old cool parts and, the old pawn shop stuff and things like that. I'd much rather watch real and Bloke's World. My mate Adrian Knox makes Bloke's World, and I think it's the best show on TV. Apart from MASH. MASH is my all-time favourite.
4077.
Correct.
That's interesting, and I think the MASH show that ran longer than the actual war that they were talking about.
Yes, correct. And was far more popular.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. And if heaven does exist, what would God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I'm pretty sure I can't see your name here, sir.
Yeah, that's
you're not.
I think you're booked in at the other joint down the road.
You haven't got a reservation.
That's exactly right.
You're not booked in here.
No.
Wade, thanks very much for your time today, mate.
Welcome.
I know you're an extremely busy man. We did try and tee this up at sort of early March before COVID.
Yeah.
But due to lockdown, mate. But it's fantastic if you'd come along today, make the effort to come and see us. Really appreciate it. Look forward to trying some of this Methanol Moonshine.
Yeah, let me know what you think.
And mate, I will do. And I can't wait to see you at the racetrack.
Yeah,
in
October
September,
3.
In early September, October there for the final year at Valvoline.
Beautiful, mate.
And, mate, keep up the good work because mate, we love listening to you at the Speedway and your all your input. You do a tremendous job and you should be very proud of what you do.
Thanks, Clayton. Thanks, Drew. Really appreciate it, mate.
It's good to be a part
Thank
of
you
it.
for what you guys do for our sport.
One thing I did take away from that, mate, you said that Speedway's consumed your life.
Yeah.
But listening to your stories, I doubt you'd have it any other way.
Look, there's absolutely true, but I will tell you that the one thing that I regret, and I continue to repeat the cycle, and Gary Rush often said the same thing, that his kids grew up while he raced, and I still have had way too much focus on this way of life compared to my children. So there's no doubt that there has been a distinct imbalance in the times that I should be spending with my beautiful sons while they're still part of my life as young men growing up. That I've been very fortunate that their mum has covered that role beautifully while we're divorced and have been for a long time. That's probably my biggest regret. I've put far too much emphasis on the sport and less on my sons.
Family.
Yeah, family's everything, and I'm reminded of that constantly.
For sure.
Again, echo Clayton's words. We do appreciate your time coming on and making the trip to see us. And again, you should be extremely proud of what you have achieved and what you continue to do for the sport, mate. Again, thank you for coming on.
Appreciate it, boys. Can't wait to see you in your Methanol Moonshine hoodies too soon. And I reckon Dad's a lay down Mazare for a hoodie.
Yeah, sounds great.
Thanks, Wade.
Thanks,
Take
Wade.
care. Appreciate it.
And that wraps up our chat with Wade Aunger, the voice of Speedway and Hey Hey at Saturday Star. If you want to get your hands on a bottle of Methanol Moonshine, an Aussie take on an American icon, or pick up some cool merch, visit www.methanolmoonshine.com.au. If you have missed any previous episodes of the KRGS Doors podcast, you can download them from our website, www.krgsdoors.com.au/podcasts, or on your favourite podcast player, search KRGS Doors. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to ensure you don't miss any future episodes. This also boosts our ranking and my ego. The other thing I suggest, if you have enjoyed the podcast, head to your favourite podcast player and leave a review or a rating. On our next episode, we speak to Michael Odgers of Yes Press Print. With 3 generations of successful printing companies in the family, Michael has continued the tradition, providing quality service and print solutions over the last 25 years. I've been your host, Drew Blackman, and you've been fantastic for tuning in today. As always, you could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. Thanks. Till next time. The KRGS Doors Show, proudly brought to you by KRGS Doors. For all your shopfront roller shutters, roller grills, folding closures and bifold doors, visit www.krgsdoors.com.au.